Live yet? Oh, we're live. We're live. Did you guys see a thing that said we're live? Okay.
Yeah, we're live. I was just dancing to our song.
Did the opening go live too?
What would you say, Sharon?
Was the opening live as well?
I have no idea.
Oh,
I hope you all saw the little jazzy thing, because then you're all wondering, like, why were we all like
why were we all dancing? Maybe we should play it again just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, this is what we.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Isn't It Romantic Book Club. It's the blonde trio tonight.
Diana's not here, so
Diana's not here. And when we're at conferences and the three of us hang around, they call us the blonde trio. So we'll be getting in trouble probably tonight.
Probably.
Yeah. We don't have Diana to keep us in line.
Right. Yeah.
She's our tech guru, so without her,
yeah.
It'll be fine.
So I just want to welcome everybody watching tonight. We've got we're beaming live into the Isn't It Romantic Book Club. My Dangerously Dark Darlings, Jenny's Page Turners, Midnight in the Garden, Team Source Books. We're into YouTube, and we should be having a podcast, of this coming out too. So woohoo, we're everywhere tonight. So, and we're going to be discussing, Sharon's book, Love's Last Kiss.
Thank you.
We're so excited.
I'm excited.
The cover is really gorgeous, Sharon. That is just a gorgeous.
Thank you. I used the same cover artist that did my other books. And so I thought she really did a great job with this one. I'm so happy with it.
It's gorgeous. It really is. Well, anyway, I'm Abbie Roads. I write dark romantic thrillers. I tell people to think an episode of Criminal Minds meets a love story with a little paranormal twist. My latest novel is Capturing Fate. It's available and out now. Gosh, I tell you.
It's so hard.
It is. It's so difficult. And then, for whatever reason, my head is so big and my computer is literally further than arm's length away. And I have to lean forward to type on it. I don't know why my head is so big. And I can't push my computer any further away or it's going to fall off the desk. So I'm sorry, everyone, my head is so big.
And when we're down a person, we all seem much larger when there's only three of us on the screen.
Yes, exactly. So, Jenny?
Well, good. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Jennie Marts. I write Western romance, cozy mysteries. I write romantic comedy. And here's I just happen to have a little stack of my hot little cowboys here. This is my horse rescue series. Golly. And I'm excited because this week, I know we're talking about Sharon, but this week, I'm going to do a little shameless self-promotion here. My new book just came out. My new book from Hallmark Publishing. It's called Cowboy Ever After.
I can't wait to get it
out. Isn't it so?
I love it.
It's about a romance writer who is struggling with, she's getting the details wrong. She writes Western romance and she's getting the details wrong. And so her editor sends her out to a ranch in Montana, her brother's ranch. And there she meets the real life replica of the hero in her story.
That's a great
having a lot of fun with my new Hallmark book. And then next month, I only have 2 books coming out this year, and they just happen to both be coming out in June and July, is Never Enough Cowboy. And this is the next in the horse rescue series. So
is this going to be number 6 or number 5 in the horse rescue series?
This is number 4 in the series, but it is number 9 in the Credence world.
Okay.
Wow.
So there was 4 books number 8 in the Credence world. There was 4 books originally with the hockey playing cowboys, and then in the same town they transitioned to a horse rescue.
And how many are going to be in the horse
rescue? Of the horse rescue.
Okay. So
this is 8th in the Credence world.
Okay.
That's cool. That's a gorgeous cover.
Gorgeous cover.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is totally Ethan Rayburn right here. And I love that they have a horse in the background and they have the mountains and it looks like Colorado and he's smiling and happy, and I'm super happy about it. So let's just talk about our guest for this evening. So far, usually we have 4 of us introducing ourselves, and that takes a good 15 minutes. And right now 5 minutes in, intros are over. We are diving right in. So we had so much fun reading your book, Sharon. So let me just introduce our favorite Sharon. Sharon is a Jersey girl who landed in Virginia. She is a chemical and patent librarian who once studied dress design in the couture houses of Paris. And, like, that's not enough. And worked as a Red Cross caseworker in South Korea.
Oh my gosh, Sharon, your life.
Woman is just like has the most
not that interesting anymore.
And y'all, she just got back from 3 weeks in Europe.
In Europe. So
her life is interesting.
We're barely talking to her. So because it took her forever to decide what she wanted to do when she grew up, she now writes romance and women's fiction novels filled with suspense, adventure, and love, and a lot of cool puzzles. She's a great puzzle worker. Her best-selling, I don't mean puzzles like that you put together, I mean mind puzzles. Her best-selling Deadly Force romantic suspense series is set in a world with scary assassins who bow before killing you, sexy Green Berets seeking redemption, and smart, sassy heroines who save them all. It's also a world where Sharon... it's also a world where, I was going to say a world where Sharon... Okay. It's also a world where, since Sharon is slow and clumsy, which is not true,
it is very
true. Chance of making it out alive would be slim.
It's very true.
She also writes small-town contemporary romances, gothic romantic mysteries set in the sultry South, and Christmas stories. This woman does it all because nothing brings out the romantic feels more than stories set during the holidays.
That's very true.
Wowza. Welcome, Sharon.
Yes, welcome, Sharon.
It's so strange being on this side of the camera.
We could spend the whole hour just talking about your interesting life. Holy mackerel.
Not that interesting. It used to be really interesting, and then it stopped being interesting. It's fine.
Come back from 3 weeks in Europe. Like,
that was fun. I will say that was a if anyone's interested, the Paris Writing Salon, who was started by a bunch of Golden Heart finalists. You might know her at Abbie. Her name is Gabrielle Luthi, and she was in one of our classes. Anyway, she's from Australia, and she started this wonderful group called the Paris Writing Salon, and she runs writing retreats in Paris. And I signed up to do one in 2019 that was supposed to take place in 2020, and it's just been pushed. And so it had just happened a few weeks ago, so I went, and it was wonderful. They did a wonderful, wonderful job. And then my kids graduated from college, the twins, and so we took them to Paris. They met me there for their graduation present. So
wow.
It was really fun. It was exhausting. Traveling is very hard right now. If for those of you who are traveling around during the summer, try not to fly. That's all I'll say.
Why? What's making it so bad? I haven't flown.
Cancellations and delays everywhere you go.
Okay.
And it's no. I mean, I don't know who you're going to blame, but it is what it is. And you just have to be patient. Take a deep breath and just not. And what I learned is not have a schedule. Try not to have a schedule because you just don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, it was great. It was fun. I'm glad to be home though.
Okay, Sharon. So here's the deal. I read your book.
Because you had to.
Well, because I like your books. And so as I'm reading, I'm doing this thing in my head going, I wonder if this is real. Like, is this a real thing, or did Sharon make this up? Like, because there's all these like little history things in here.
A lot of it's real.
And that's what I figured it was, but everything I was reading, I'm like, oh, is this a real thing, or is this one Sharon made up? Because you do such a good job. It's like a Dan Brown novel, like where I can't tell where fact and fiction diverge.
Well, I love the obscureness of history. Like I have all these books like Oddities of the Civil War or Strange Sightings during like colonial times or whatever, because all these random things happen in the founding of this continent, and and it's all been lost, right? Like in the last book where we have one in this country's history, we have one unnamed witch who was tried and convicted and then released. It's the only one in the whole history of North America. There's only one who's not named because by law they had to be named. So little things like that. That's not in this book. It was in the previous book, but like that kind of stuff fascinates me. Like why? Like why her? Out of 489 people, why that one person? Like, you know, so anyway, so in this book, it was the same thing. And when I won't give it away, but when I stumbled upon this fact of auctions of signatures, that's just so odd. Like, I can see Julius Caesar, the signature of Julius Caesar and William Shakespeare going for millions and millions of dollars, but an obscure signer of the Declaration of Independence, that seems weird.
Yes,
but it's because he didn't sign anything. He was a complete failure in life, so he didn't sign anything.
So Sharon, we got a little excited here. Why don't you go back and tell us about the book? So tell us about Love's Last Kiss, and for those of our watchers that haven't read it yet, give us a little preview and tell us what it's about.
So Love's Last Kiss takes place in the Deadly Force world. And I'll go back a little farther. It was originally a short story for a collection of short stories with source books.
I cannot.
And then it was going to be a novella. Like it went from short story lead magnet to novella, that in an anthology that was canceled during COVID. I don't actually know who else was going to be in it, but it was canceled. And so I got the rights back to it. And then I thought, oh, I'll just finish this and put this up as like a lead magnet or, you know, as a novella thing. And as I was writing it, I thought, you know what, there's so much more here than just a novella length story. And so I thought, well, since I got the rights back, I'll just turn it into a full length story. But then I won't go into all there were legal issues with that. But anyway, I got around them, but it just took a lot of time. And then I was able to finish the full length story. Because it was supposed to be set as a short story within the world, it actually takes place between books 1 and book 2. So everything
that was really interesting. That was a question I had for you. Like I was about why that was set like that. So that's really interesting. Okay, so tell us what the book is about.
Yeah, so the book is about a stripper named Rose Guthrie, a young woman who's also has who has to take care of her younger brother who has a ventricular heart disease issue, and she is the sole guardian of this. She's not even the legal guardian, but she's the sole guardian of her brother, and she needs money. There's very strict rules about heart transplants for children in this country, and she needs to actually come up with cash in order to buy insurance, a very specific kind of insurance, so he can get his surgery. So she makes a deal with the scummy manager of the nightclub she works in, Deke, and all she has to do is pick up a box and deliver a box. And he says to her, there's no drugs in it, because she said she wouldn't deal with drugs. That's all she has to do is pick up the box and deliver the box. But Deke disappears in the first book. And so she's desperate because it's quite a bit of money. And she desperately needs the money. And so she starts looking for the box. Well, she looks for Deke and looks for the box. And she finds that there's this whole secret society also looking for the box. And the hero works for the secret society of assassins called the Fianna, where he's one of their minions, but they're recruiting him as a warrior, as someone who'll work full time for them, kind of. And he's an ex-army ranger, and he's very tough, and has been in love with her for a long time. But when she comes to him, he realizes that she's stepping into a world she doesn't understand, and then he's given the order to help her find this box, but then take it from her and betray her, or else he'll be forced to kill her. And it's convoluted. My books are always kind of convoluted. That's all I can say.
Yeah, but anyway. That's what makes them fun. That's the puzzle. That's the puzzle that I was talking about, is you always have a great puzzle to solve. And
so they basically have, it's a treasure hunt. They have to find something within a certain time frame. And then in order for him to get what he wants, he has to betray her. And I'm not going to go any farther into what he does for those who haven't read it.
Right.
And then, like a lot of other books, the women always logically figure out a way to save everyone because they can't.
Of course they do.
Yeah, right. Well, women. Yeah, and the world is filled with like ex-Green Berets and Army Rangers that are all 6'5", wandering around with big muscles, right? So she's not going to save them physically. I mean, it would be nice if she could, and she could try. But in these books, I like to have the heroine do it in a different way. It's the logic and the intelligence that they bring to the table that helps save the day. But without both they wouldn't make it, right? So you need both.
So I thought something interesting, speaking of your heroines who save the day, this is a very young heroine.
She's very young. She's the youngest heroine I've ever written.
She is very young, and I wondered what was the thought process behind that of why you made her so young. So she would be nubile enough to be a stripper?
Well, honestly, I needed her to be young and naive enough to not really understand that she's being played by the legal system, right? I didn't want to make her a victim, but I didn't want her, if she was a grown woman, she would have figured out a way to hire the right lawyers. But I know, having 22-year-olds, there's still so much they don't know about the world, about how the world works. And that's what I really needed for her, was I needed her to not fully understand, one, the danger she was in, but how the world works. And towards the end of the book, she does figure out how the world works. Like, she understands it's all about leverage and manipulation to get what you need in this kind of scary world.
You did that very good, because there was, like, in the very beginning, I'm like, what? She didn't question this, like, and that's like, a 40-some-year-old woman looking at a 20-some-year-old woman thinking, what? You didn't think to question this? But you're right. Like, if I was that age, I wouldn't have questioned it either.
And her parents are dead, right? And her parents are dead.
Nobody to, like, consult with.
Yeah, her uncle betrayed her, took all her money, took her house, her cousins, horrible. And she feels powerless. She is somewhat powerless, but she feels powerless. And I think, and that was really what I was going for with the younger heroine, was that I needed her to truly feel powerless, even if us as grown women looking back, like, well, you're not as powerless as you think you are. But I remember being that age and living in Asia and being, kind of scared, and you feel powerless. Like,
Sharon, again, living in Asia, listen to you. You've had
I know. When I was 23, I'd been married for 2 years, and I was pregnant with my first child.
I know. I was married.
I wasn't pregnant, but I was married. But I wasn't pregnant. Wow. I know, we were all married young. I know we've had this conversation. We're all child brides. But so, and it was a risk. Having a younger heroine is a bit of a risk, because you don't want to make her stupid. You don't want to make her like the young soap opera ingenue kind of thing.
No, you did her well, because there was times where I just thought, wow, you really didn't think to question this. But then I get where she was coming from. Totally got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and she was orphaned from, like, I think 14. I can't remember. She was orphaned young. Mm-hmm. And she lived on her own. Like, she was on the streets by the time she was 17.
Yeah. So let me ask you about Doom. Was Doom a real thing? Like the Fight Club? Like, because this is one of those, was this real? Did Sharon make this up?
So the Tondi's Tavern, in the location where Doom is, like, that's all real. There was really a tavern there, and there was an underground room where the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence happened in the United States, or in the first 13 colonies. It's the first recorded that we know of public reading, and it was in an underground room, and the Sons of Liberty would meet under there while the British officers would meet in the tavern above. The actual Fight Club, I made that up. I mean, underground room to, like, meet and, like, we're gonna have beer in the underground room.
But this is what I love, because, like, the whole thing I'm reading, is this real? Did Sharon make this up? And I'm trying to figure out which things are which, and you win every time.
So the underground room is actually real, and you used to be able to tour it, but that area, actually, believe it or not, is actually prone to earthquakes, and there's a lot of tunnels underneath Savannah, and a lot of them are now shut down for safety reasons. So, and last time I was down there, that whole area, you couldn't go underneath, even with the tour guide.
Well, that's what I was wondering, is can people really just sneak into these tunnels and go wandering around like they did? And how creepy and gross, and no thank you ever would I do that. So
I totally do that.
As a parent, I would say no way. If I was 17, I would say, of course there's a way to I'd been the first one down there. I'm sure there is. I mean, because they run ghost tours of certain tunnels, like they're all mapped out, and they run ghost tours of very specific tunnels that are safe. So that part's true. Actually, Samantha talks about that there are tunnels that have been cleared, they're safe, they've been structurally, inspected, and then all the other tunnels are off limits except to city workers when they're trying to do stuff. And it's not just because they're structurally unsafe. There's also a lot of, I know this sounds gruesome, there's like bodies buried everywhere. That whole area was a swamp, and it went through yellow fever epidemics and went through 2 wars. I mean, it was held siege during both the Civil War and the Revolutionary War. There are bodies everywhere, and it's a real issue when they do road work and they find a body. Then you got to stop everything, bring in the archaeologists, bring in the anthropologists, document everything. And that's what they were finding in the tunnels, is that there's like bones and things, like not sticking out of the wall, but you know what I mean? So they tend to keep, if it's not been excavated and properly reconstructed, it's all walled off except to city power workers and water people. Like people have to go down there and manage the utilities. And part of it's because it's like a cemetery. And until all that's managed, but there's no money to go in and do all that. So anyway, and it floods periodically too. So
okay, so we have to say that we are seeing you guys' questions, and hi everybody that's here. We're so happy to see you guys. Barbara is super brave. She says she'd go right in those tunnels with you, Sharon. So
with beers. Yeah,
I might go in a tunnel, but not a cave. If there's some place where I could get my fat hiney stuck and like I wouldn't be able to get through, then that like freaks me out. But anyway, so keep asking questions. I think we're going to do a giveaway later.
Yeah, I'll give away. I'm going to give away 3 e-copies. I'll give away 3 e-copies of Love Songs.
Nice.
Anyone. And I guess I'll pick the winners on Sunday night, so that way people have time to watch the replay.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, Barbara was married in a cave.
No.
Wow. No, that sounds like an interesting story. So we did have some questions earlier about how long did it take you to write this book? So you always write long.
I always write long. And this book took a particularly long time because it went through 3 iterations. It was a short story of about 10,000 words, then a novella of about 35,000 words. And then I think the current length is like 120,000 words. It didn't take longer than my other books, but it took a long time to publish because I was tied up in contracts.
How long does it normally take you to write 120,000 book?
I can usually do it in 10 months.
Wow.
This book took longer again because I was writing 3 separate stories, and then we kept changing what it was going to be, and I went to Sourcebooks with 4 premises, and this was the one Deb, our editor, liked the most. But then she had a lot of comments about it too, and I ended up using a lot of that when I built the book up into a larger novel. So so it was
it flows so well. You can't tell that there's
and to think that you somehow started out at 10,000 words, then got it to 30, then 120. Like I can't even fathom this being a short story.
I can't even fathom writing a 10,000 word book because she always writes long.
I'll say it wasn't working well. And I was very stressed. But,
I have so much more to say.
So the full length version probably took me about 9 months, but I had months where I was doing the shorter version and then the novella, and then all the other time of waiting in between, of getting approval, getting rights back, things like that.
Cool.
And then I think Siobhan said,
that she loves to travel, and what's your dream destination?
My dream destination, I would love to go to Australia, New Zealand. Mm-hmm. I've never been there. I've been to Europe and I've been to Asia. I've never been to Africa. I would like to do that, but I would really love to go to Australia, New Zealand. I'm lumping them together, even though they're separate places, but lumping them all together.
Well, they're over there.
They're over there. And if I'm down in one, I have to see the other.
Right. You're too close to like not do both.
Let me see what other questions. Oh, Nadine. Hi, Nadine. So Nadine, for those who don't know, is my fabulous, fabulous critique partner. She writes under the name Susanna Eastman and is a sci-fi romance author. She's wonderful. Her participation question is, what's next? Oh my gosh, so many things. I am working on the next book in the Deadly Force series, which A Promise at Midnight, which is the hero was in this book, In Search of Truth, Alex, and so it's his book, and he's the brother. Alex is the brother of the prince, who's the leader of the Fianna, and he's very irreverent, thinks it's all nonsense, wants to have nothing to do with his brother, and all of that mess. And yet, that whole story of the prince, there's two factions. There's the prince and his Fianna warriors, and then I have a man named Kells Torridon and all of his Green Berets. And all of the books are about the heroes all come from this unit of former Green Berets. And the prince and Kells have been in a war for about 10 years. And Alex was there when the war started because he was a younger man, and he's the brother of the prince. And so I'm looking forward to writing that book because it begins to bring together more of the overarching story structure, story arcs of what actually happened to cause all of this chaos and nonsense that's going on.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so we have to talk about the Fianna.
Yeah.
Like, did you just make this whole thing up?
No, we've talked about this. No, they were real. They are written extensively about in the Celtic cycles of Gaelic poetry, which is fairy tales, right? All of the Gaelic fairy tales that most people don't know about because we study Western European fairy tales, but the Gaelic fairy tales are their own. They have their own pantheon of gods. They have their own stories. And they talk about a man named Finn McCool. And during the first Roman invasions Rome invaded Britain and did pretty well. And they moved over to Ireland. They did terribly. And it's because Finn McCool and his Fianna army, it comes from his name Finn, they call him the Fianna. He went around and grabbed every young man he could find who was not a first son, because the first sons would become lords, lairds, kings, whatever. So he took the second, third, fourth sons, and he formed this army under very, very strict warcraft rules. And they are the only army in the history of the Roman Empire to repel the Romans.
Oh, wow.
And it's written extensively about by two Roman historians. I won't go into that now because that would make me seem like a nerd. But anyway, so two Roman historians wrote extensively about Fianna and Finn McCool and these warriors who were so brutal and so disciplined that the Roman army fled from them. And the same thing then happened with the Vikings in the 3rd and 4th centuries. The Vikings showed up after they had kind of taken, really had settlements in Britain. They moved to Ireland and did not last long. They were very quickly repelled for the same exact reason. And the Fianna, and we're talking like 1st century, 2nd century AD, they were like to the extreme with their warcraft training. They would train naked in all weather, right? Can you just imagine? Like, I can't even imagine that. I
don't even like walking naked from the bathroom to the bedroom to get.
I know, I'm like wrapped up in a robe.
I can't imagine having like a sword fight.
I know. And they
spoke
especially
for guys with all their bits about.
I know. I'd be worried. But one of the things they were required to do, and this is written about by Roman historians, they were required to speak only in verse. They had to memorize all of the cycles of Gaelic poetry, because at the time, the Gaelic history and the Gaelic poetry and all the Druid stuff, it was all oral. They did not have a written language. They didn't have a written language until the 7th century. And so, when they adopted Latin, when the Christian monks began to show up and really force a Latin type language on them. And then they ended up adopting the British language because they were right. There was so much commerce between them, but they did not have a written language. So everything came from stories. And there's 7 cycles of Gaelic poetry, all broken down by name with different years. I won't go into that either because that's really nerdy. But they had to memorize the poems and only speak in verse from the poems as a form of extreme discipline.
So Sharon, how did you come up with all of the lines for your Fianna warriors, like how much time did it take you to research to come up with these Shakespearean lines
a long time.
every time they speak?
It takes a long time. I usually choose a poem or a play that is associated with each book to help narrow it down and to give me thematically. Like, so thematically, this book follows one of the Shakespeare sonnets. And so I pulled a lot of language from the sonnets as far as how the Fianna warriors spoke to each other.
So I think you should just claim your nerd flag right now because you are super brilliant and smart.
Yeah, it's like I just think Sharon is so way much smarter than I am.
Doesn't everyone do stuff like that? That's what I'm like. I think everyone does stuff like that.
You do smart stuff. I do kind of get interested in dumb stuff.
Like I'm trying to think of the last thing that I researched. Like that was
like I spent time researching how to make pineapple pie.
Yeah.
And like Sharon's researching all this deep history,
I know. Yeah, I'm working on a cozy mystery that has a beekeeping grandma, and so I research like recipes that have honey in them.
And then there's Sharon with all this Fianna warrior stuff from Shakespeare.
Yeah, so I'm like, they slathered butter on the vanilla honey banana bread, and Sharon's like, thou comest.
But it's actually hard to write it without being boring or preachy or like lectury. You know what I mean?
And it is quite an adventure. So your books always feel like we're just kind of racing through this adventure. So I love that.
I love books like that. I love the Dan Brown books. I love the racing from, beginning to end. And you don't know where the next twist or turn is going to come. And everyone is betraying everyone else. That just makes things more interesting.
Right.
Yeah. We have to do a quick shout out to Diana that we miss you.
We do.
Oh, this is our heart.
Yes.
She. I thought she might have texted. She didn't. So, Barbara, will there be another book in the series? Yes, actually, there's 12 books in the series, not including this one. This one was like an outlier. So yes, there's
12?
12. When I did the original proposal, there was 12 books broken up into four 3 arcs. Like, so each 3 books has its own arc, and then there's an overarching arc.
Are you going to finish the rest of these 12?
Because I have a lot of them outlined. I've been working on this for a long time, like over a decade. I've been doing the research. As I write other things, I just keep coming back to these stories. And so I figure as long as they're selling and I still have readers wanting to read them, I'll keep writing them.
Do we need to go back to that brilliant part? Like,
no. If you hear about my anthologies later on, you'll see I'm really not brilliant.
So tell us about the anthologies that you're working on, because this is kind of different from what you have been doing in shorts. And
so I am actually working on 3 full-length novels right now, 2 for my agent and the next Deadly Force book, the one I told you about, A Promise at Midnight, which I hope comes out next year. But I'm doing 2 for my agent, a Southern Gothic mystery, which I love writing. It's in first person, and a Christmas novel, like hopefully for Hallmark or Harlequin Christmas, one of the holiday series. But during COVID, I think like a lot of us, I just floundered. I was writing, but I couldn't focus. I was in contract limbo with my publisher. There was just, and of course, like the rest of the world, there were things going on. And unlike a lot of people in the area, my husband had to go to work every day. So I had that was actually more stressful, I think, having him out in the world during all of that time. And so I was inspired by Diana, actually, because she wrote that wonderful Christmas novella. Remember, we all read it last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In Amor, actually.
Mm-hmm. And yes, that's right. That's what it was called. And a friend of mine made an offhanded comment, and it wasn't mean, but it was like, "Oh, you could never do that," because she knew how hard I'd worked on this, and that this was supposed to be a short story, and then it wasn't, and then of course it was a 20,000 word book, which seems to be about like the average length of my novels. And she said, "Oh, you could never write a short story." And It
Sure.
really irritated me. And I thought, you know what? I need to learn how to write lead magnets. I need to learn, for the next, publishing contract. When they asked me to do a novella, I need to be able to do it like in 6 weeks. Like I need to learn. This is a skill I don't have. And so I joined a couple Facebook groups of women who run these anthologies, these romance that you see them all over Facebook and Amazon, and they do quite well. And so I joined, I think 6 or 7 of these things. I can't remember because they're all due like 9 weeks. But anyway,
welcome to my world. Welcome to Jennie's deadline.
So what I did was I came up with I really love comedy, but I don't love rom-coms. I know that sounds crazy. Like I've never been a rom-com fan.
I love rom-coms.
I know, and I don't know why, but so I thought, you know what, I'm going to write my own kind of rom-com, which is just a little bit edgier, a little bit funnier, and with like, I don't want to say a mystery, but like a little bit of suspense. Like not a lot, because they're short stories, right? So I came up with a whole series called that takes place in a place called Kings Mill, Virginia, and it's very Stars Hollow-ish because I love Gilmore Girls. And it's a quirky town in the mountains that is famous. So for those of you who are not from the East Coast, it's famous because George Washington had tea there. So in the East Coast, George Washington has slept everywhere, and every town from New Hampshire down to South Carolina has signs like George Washington slept here, George Washington slept here. So their claim to fame was George Washington stopped for tea one day, and they had this whole tourist industry, and then it all died. And the series is about an Army Ranger who's a colonel. He comes back and he's like 49, 50, and he comes back and he's like, what happened to my town? There was a motorcycle club. So we had the edgy motorcycle guys. We had the tourist people. We had the apple picking in the fall. We had all these things. And he decides it's because there's no love left in the town. And so he becomes a secret matchmaker, and he does it behind the scenes. He gets all the old people in town, the older couples, like the people on the pickleball court, to play matchmaker for him while he's like managing up here. He's like the puppet master. And he has,
I want to read this.
I know, this is so cute. When do we get to read this?
Well, you'll get to read them this fall. And so I came up with this whole idea that I have this, he's kind of a crotchety old Army colonel, and he's matchmaking. And he's matchmaking for his cousins and his younger brothers and his nephews, because because they're not doing anything with their lives, right? And he wants to move them up and out, and he wants to regenerate, bring the town back to life. And so there's so I'm sorry. So I have one in this is an anthology called Mr. October.
I love that cover.
It's about a woman. This is one of the men that's being matchmaked by his uncle, and it's about a woman who's an event planner. She's lived in town. She and her hero were together in high school. They broke up, and she runs the haunted house every year. And this year, the pickleball people have said there's no haunted house this year, so she has to go to the hero and get the haunted house going in. It's okay. These are 15 to 20,000 word stories. So a lot of depth to them, but she's dealing with like the teenage zombies in the basement wandering off and smoking in the back meadow, and she has all these minor problems, but it's a love story. It's a very simple love story. And then this one is about another couple who are trying to have a honeymoon in the town. And
so all of the novellas that you've been writing are all connected to this.
So they're all connected. This one is one of the couple's first Valentine's Day. It doesn't go well. And this is another one called Wanted Mistletoe. And this is, he was the head of the motorcycle club, but he abandoned the club, and he's coming back, and he's all edgy and dark, and he ends up running a cupcake store. So they're very fun. They're very fun. I
read, Sharon. Like,
do you know though, it changed me doing this. This was really hard because I was in limbo for so long. I had so many, there was agent meetings, there was publisher meetings, there was other kinds of meetings and things like that. And it was really getting me down. And my first version of the Southern Gothic Mystery, I said to my agent, she liked it, but she didn't love it. So she sent me back to the table, and that really got me down. And so it was in the midst of all of this, nothing's happening, right? I just came up with this idea. I joined all these box sets. So they'll all start coming out, and they start coming out November 1st, I think, through next summer. I think there's 6 or 7 of them. And they're fun. Like I said, they're silly, they're fun. But I can already tell they all have the potential. If I wanted, once they're out of the box sets, I could expand them. I could make them category length novels, like 50 to 70,000 words.
You have your own box set of all of these stories. Yeah.
That's what I'll do when they're out of their anthologies. And some of them are charity anthologies, so and I
think it's interesting that you talked about how and I think a lot of authors do this. Like, we read a story or we have an idea and somebody's maybe done something a little bit like it, or if you've ever been like watching a mystery and it doesn't, you think it's going to go this way, and you're like, oh, if I would have written that, I would have had it totally do this. And it just sparks these ideas for us. Or we say like, well, nobody has written this book that I want to read this story about, and so I'm just going to go out there and write it. I'm going to write the story that I want to read.
Yes.
Well, I think the whole Deadly Force series for me was that too. It took a long time to sell that. And I just kept writing them. My agent's like, why? You need to write me something else. I'm like, but these are the stories I want to read. I like big, sexy, hunky alpha heroes. I do. Like, I'm not going to apologize for that.
I don't think you should.
But
I like those Sharon, so.
For a while there was the whole thing, well, but they have to be toned down. And I understand where that was coming from, but I thought, instead of toning him down, why don't I tone her up, right? Make her a match for him instead of, anyways, so to your point, Jenny, that's why I started writing those books, because that's what I wanted to read. I wanted to read women who might not be able to, make it through Green Beret training, but they could match wits intellectually and see things in a different way because of whatever it is, their background or their history or whatever. So, and Lena asked me a question. Is my Southern Gothic contemporary, or it takes place in the 1700s? It's contemporary. I'm actually playing with the idea of moving it to the 1980s because I'm really struggling with the technology issue.
Oh, the 80s sounds fun.
It does. It does sound fun. And
the 80s were fun. I can attest.
They were fun. I had a great time.
I was more of a 90s because I think you guys are just a smidge older than me.
I know.
Yeah, I think we are.
I love
the 80s were super fun. Oh, thank you, Barbara. She said I loved the series because it was so different. Thank you. That's why I wrote it, because I wanted to read something different. And I had loved all of the Suzanne Brockman books, all the Roxanne St. Clair books, all of those things. But to what I was saying to Lena about timing, even I set the Deadly Force books mostly on an island off the coast of Savannah that doesn't have cell service for a very strong reason. Because technology, it's just so hard. It's so hard because
because readers are always like, why didn't they just use their phone? Why didn't they just call? Why didn't they just look it up on their smartphone?
But then it changes, right? The smartphone tomorrow could be an implant in our heads. We don't know what's going to happen. Right. And it dates the book so quickly. So that's why I'm considering setting my the Southern Gothic mystery there. And it's about a woman. I love the story. It's about a woman who is a professional skeptic on a TV ghost hunting show because of something that happened to her in her past, in her own home, Southern Gothic home that was haunted. And so she became a professional skeptic, and then she goes back and realizes maybe she's not the skeptic she thought she was. Like, there's all these questions.
Like everything you're talking about, like I can't wait to read. So.
I know, me too. Hurry up. Just leave right now and go back to your computer and start writing again, because we need this sooner rather than later.
I have to say, learning how to write short has been very difficult, but it's been so rewarding. And I'm really glad I did it. Because it's a skill. It's definitely, Nora Roberts once said at a meeting I went to that writing a short story is like performing Swan Lake in a phone booth. And that was a great metaphor. I mean, it was just a great way to describe you, because you have to have an entire arc. You have to have change. You have to have conflict, but you only have 4 chapters, right? So do you get rid of the description? Do you get rid of the internal thoughts? What do you get rid of? you get rid of time, certainly, right? Because you can't have it spread over weeks. So anyway, I'm really glad I did it. And the reason I'm really glad I did it is it got me out of my funk. I was feeling very like, I just don't want to do this anymore.
Well, and I think too, there's like, you could get a sense of accomplishment a lot quicker.
Yes.
Because when it takes you because I'm with you when they're taking a long time to write a book. It takes me a long time too. And it's like, you just get so far in and you're like, dear God, this is taking forever. I'm making no progress. And you are, but it feels like you're not. Mm-hmm. And, I think you get bogged down in that mentality. And I'm sure there's like this immediate gratification. You can just write this short thing and it's done. Look, it's done.
And I have learned these women who run these box sets are so smart business-wise. I have learned so much from them about everything from newsletter swaps to, running lead magnet promos on book funnel. I didn't even know what book funnel was. And I had to learn what book funnel was. So I'm really glad I did it because I've learned a lot. I really have. And I wish now I could go back in time to when my original books came out and knew this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Because I'm so much more on it now.
Don't you think there's so much of being an author is just learning new things? We're constantly learning. That's why we love conferences. We're constantly like absorbing information and trying to learn things. And I think having that flexibility to be able to change a little bit and try something new and
definitely. And now that I've been indie publishing as well as traditionally publishing, I'm really glad I did that too. Like, it's given me a totally different perspective on both sides. And I will approach both sides now differently than I did in my first indie published book, my first trad book. As I continue in this career, I'll definitely I'll just approach things a little bit differently and more, I'll just have less emotionally. Let me put it that way. I'll be less emotional about things because I finally realize it's not all personal. And I know everyone says that and you're like, oh, of course it's not personal, it's business. But when you have so much of yourself wrapped up in your words, mm-hmm. It is personal. And it's just, it's hard.
I agree with you, Sharon, because I feel like too, I get jealous of like writers who can write really fast.
Oh, I do too.
Because I feel like to them, I'm jealous of them, because I feel like they can whip out book after book after book and it's not personal to them, Right. But I'm spending so much time with a book, and I'm assuming you probably feel the same way. When I spend so much time with a book, it does feel personal.
Yes.
And so it's a hard thing to wrap your brain around, that this is supposed to be business, but when you're putting so much of your heart and soul in it.
So I think maybe, don't you think some of it because I don't know, I sort of write fast.
I think
I'm jealous of you.
I'm jealous of you.
I know, but I think what makes it so personal when you are trying to write faster is that it's all consuming all the time. That story, like you don't get to spread it out. You don't get to think to yourself, well, I'll ruminate on this idea for a couple of days and see what I can come up with. And you're just like, okay, I gotta write now. I gotta do this. And so it's like always, no matter what you're doing all the time, somewhere you're thinking about, well, what am I going to write next? Because I have to have something to put on the page tonight. I have to have something to put on the page first thing in the morning for 8 hours. So
that's
I don't know. I think, there's just a different, because you don't have or it's not that you don't have, you just don't take as much time to be able to, I don't know. I'm writing full time this year. And over the past several years, don't tell my job this, although I don't work there anymore, but I can remember sitting at my desk at work when I was at work, and I would just sit there and think about my story all day. Not all day, but, I would have like time to think and ruminate and figure stuff out. And now that I'm home and writing full time all the time, it's like, oh, the pressure is so intense. Like, I'm writing for 8 hours. You got to come up with stuff.
Yeah. And I'm a processor. I'm high in Gallup. I think Abbie is too, high intellection and high input. So I can take in a ton of information, but I need a lot of time to process it.
I think Sharon and I are brain twins.
I think we're twins.
You know what, Sharon, here's the funny thing. Like, your character was Cade Dolan.
Mm-hmm.
in Capturing Fate, his name's Dolan Watts.
I know.
And in the book I'm writing right now, I just finished book 1 like a month ago. She's a stripper.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. And I'm like, oh my God, Sharon and I are sharing the same brain.
Oh, it's happened for a long time.
Well, I have a Cade in one of my books too. I have a Cade. So I don't have a Dolan. Maybe I will, but I have a Cade. I just don't like to be left out.
I was going to say, now you need a stripper.
Now I need a stripper, apparently. I can put that in a cowboy book, maybe.
There you
Sure.
Well, the other thing about that book that I had to be careful was like all of that stuff about the rules about the ventricular defect syndrome.
Yeah.
Because I have a very wealthy man in that book, and my sister kept saying, well, he can just pay for the heart transplant. And I actually went through it tried very carefully. I don't know if it worked or not, but to layer in, you can't do that in the United States. In the United States, you have to have.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and that's all true about how, because you can't be seen, you can't fundraise for that kind of thing because that would be buying a heart.
Yeah,
considered purchasing. Yeah,
I have clients on the transplant list, and they run into that. People want to do a fundraiser for them, and it's like they can't.
Yep. So that's the thing I did the most research on actually in the whole book, was that making sure that was right.
Interesting.
So that was because I needed something that could be resolved in a happy way, but not fixed immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think you did a really good job with that.
Oh,
mm-hmm. Oh, and I loved King George.
Oh, I loved King George.
Oh, I loved King George too.
King George was amazing. I just wanted a little feral King George of my own.
I know. I want a feral cat too, who lives in a bell tower.
Right?
That's so fun.
The bell towers are real too.
Is that real?
That's real. That's real.
That's so neat.
I think they are still digital. They had to take the bells down during the last earthquake. So I think the bells are mostly digital now. But so there is and you used to be able to go up, but you can't do that anymore. But a long time ago, I was able to tour the bell towers. So, and I remember that actually King George actually came from a story a tour guide told me once of how they had found a cat and her kittens living up in the bell tower.
Oh, wow.
They would just come and go. I thought, that's interesting.
Wow.
Turn that into a
story. I love those little nuggets that we just get from different places.
I agree. And even like the sugar box, like the box that she has to figure out how to open, that's all real. Like sugar was so valuable. It was a commodity and you had to have access to it so you could use it, but you had to keep it safe, but you didn't want people to know what it was, right? You didn't want to have a box that said sugar on it because people would just take the box. And so they would make these ornate boxes with all different kinds of locking mechanisms. And usually the woman of the house would carry the lock, would carry it around her neck or in her pocket or in her apron or something. And she would keep the lock for the sugar box, but no one knew which box in the house was for the sugar. Like, so, because it was not marked sugar. Does that make sense?
Wow.
And isn't it interesting? I mean, and I just bought a thing of sugar today for like $2.50.
Right?
But it still seems valuable when you're craving it.
I know. That's very true.
Well, Sharon, this has been so much fun. I can't believe that we're almost at the end of an hour. That went so fast.
It did.
Thank you, guys. So our next book.
Oh, wait, we need our prop. If you're new to our show, we love having a prop just to kind of give you a little hint of what our next book is going to be. So here's our props.
We are twins, Abbie.
Of course. And of course, here I have the pink spoon. You guys are like doing a really useful, like,
yes, our whisk.
I go find my pink spoon out of my utensil crock.
So our next book is A Proposal They Can't Refuse by Natalie Kanya.
Oh my gosh, I love that cover so much.
Oh, and this book has gotten so much praise. I really can't wait to read it.
There's so many accolades about it. I'm so excited for it.
Yeah, that's great. It'll be a great July read.
Yes, definitely. I've got the audio version, so I'm very excited for the audio.
Nice.
So you're lucky.
All right, everyone. Thank you for stopping by for our discussion on Sharon Love's Last Kiss, and we'll see you next month.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.